Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and this episode is very, very important. Already, different kind of think tanks, government officials, universities, school, college from Asia Pacific. They already communicate with World Talent Economy Forum. They are very much interested about sustainability. We have many activists from climate change. We have think tanks. We have even impact investment experts. So hopefully this session will be very, very important for us. And beside that, World Talent Economy Forum, we distributing our content with the 10,000 students in the remote area. We bought laptops for 10,000 students. We distribute in many areas in Asia Pacific. So hopefully it will be very, very helpful for our youth community. We are working with the youth, and hopefully youth can understand what they have to do. Even Malaysia and Asia Pacific, they are very much concerned about ESG as well as the sustainability. Impact investments. So hopefully we will learn a lot of things from our audience. I want to start with from Madam Beth, because we have few new speakers. And Beth, yes, can you please introduce yourself with our audience and how you want to introduce the sustainability?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. My name is Reverend Beth Love, and I'm in Santa Cruz, California. And I started an organization called Eat for the Earth. And Eat for the Earth works on the issue of diet and the environment. And our mission is to make it easier for people to eat more plants and less animal products so that we can keep living here on this beautiful earth along with all of our other fellow non-human living beings. It's really important in this time that we recognize that in addition to fuels and energy and transportation and some of the other areas of emissions, that what we eat and how it is produced is a major contributor to the climate crisis and to all the other environmental disasters that we're facing. And definitely the time is now that we reckon with this issue of the climate crisis because we don't have much more time. And there have been numerous scientific studies that have shown that if we don't include dietary change and whatever change strategies we use, that we are just not going to reduce emissions enough to keep within the 1.5 or 2 degrees of warming that the IPCC has said is necessary. And so it's really important that in any forum where we're talking about the environment, that the issue of diet and what we're eating is included and integrated into the conversation. And so I appreciate being asked to be here. And it's just really important for people to know it's easier to focus on production-based emissions, but the emissions that are the most concerning in terms of diet come from consumption-based. It's what we're eating, not how it's grown. And so that's what I look forward to talking more deeply about today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mr. Ben, you are expert in impact investment, and this is really, really important. Even today, we're gonna, like we do discuss with ESG, those who are also a think tank and those who are also involved with in Asia Pacific and helping us to engage with sustainability as well as impact investment and this point of view. How do you want to share your point of view? Even after this COVID time, Malaysian government, Singapore government, then all of the Asia Pacific government, they're seriously concerned about this sustainability, this impact investments, and they're thinking those who actually involved with this kind of sustainabilities and green technology, they will get more investment from around the world. So how do you want to share your experience with our audience?
I think what Beth said is a very, very good starting point.
Yes.
It is indeed our food is very, very important. So where I generally focus mainly on impact investment is a very broad sector. It touches nearly every aspect, whether it is renewable energy, whether it's agriculture. But my focus mainly is on the climate change side of it. I don't know if you guys are aware. For example, we speak about Paris Agreement of keeping the limit to 1.5 degrees. At the present rate, it will be achieved in the next 7 years. So forget the end of the century. We are achieving it in the next 7 years. Secondly, if you look at purely on the financial point of view, I was reading a report a couple of days back. There is going to be a huge issue with stranded assets. And the global economy is going to lose 26 trillion in the coming years just because of the climate change. So there is going to be a massive, massive loss of assets. So that is the financial and the economical angle of looking into it. So there will be massive diversion of assets from all the other sectors, mainly from the fossil fuel sector, which has already started. I'm talking about disinvestment. I'm talking about closure or reduction of energy production using fossil fuel. And now there is new laws, EU Green Deal, which has already been implemented. Now the implementation is coming in order, which will also have a very strong emphasis on measurement. Because the thing is, we can sign as many agreements we want, but as long as there is no measurable activities, or nothing is going to happen. We have had experiences with that. Even in 1972, there was an agreement signed by the OECD countries. There was nearly no follow-up. So there has to be measurable activities, and this is not only for the EU Green Deal, this is also valid for the Paris Agreement. So all these points, if you add them together, is good for impact investment, because that's the only sector which is left and which has a positive future. The other sectors have now severe financial issues. So I think I'll just leave it for the moment there.
Okay. Thank you. We have different panelists. Annie, so how do you want to introduce the sustainability with us? And yeah.
Hi. Well, I'd just like to say thank you for all of us being here. Yeah, I think the answers come in from every direction, and we need to address the issue on every level. And that's why I appreciate the diversity of people here. And yeah, it is a global issue, and we as a species have never faced anything like this before, or had the type of technology, one, to get us here, and and the solutions. And so it really is every single facet of our society is wrapped up in the issue and also the solutions. So it applies to everybody and every sector of our infrastructure. And I'll just say one more thing. I happen to be in the middle of Project Drawdown. Their conference is this week online, which I've never participated in before, but I recommend that people check out drawdown.org, as they are one of the best resources for they sift through a lot of really good science all around carbon sequestration and just climate solutions all around.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Madam Savitlana, you are also part of impact investment, and you have a lot of experience in that arena. My questions to you in terms of this sustainable ecosystem development, especially green technology and this kind of things, implementation, how actually Europe as well as this Asia Pacific, they can work together, how we can making a good bridging in terms of impact investment and developing different kind of projects.
Mm-hmm. So maybe from to add a little thing to previous points, because I think it's really important. How can we move forward? So awareness and education are very important points here. So many people are still not aware about the framework like Sustainable Development Goals, right, which were defined by United Nations. Education. How do we educate our students or financial sector? So from the experience, I teach more than a couple of thousand people on the topic, and in different areas, students or financial experts. And the problem is many people just still don't know that it even exists. So we need to start there, awareness and education, in order to combine forces. We need to define what is impact investing, what is sustainable investing. So like if you talk about Europe, in Asia, we need to kind of find the common language are we agree on what do we call impact investing or not, you know, starting with these simple things. And then we would need systems which would allow to match, for example, investors and impact investing companies, startups or ventures, but also experts in different areas to engage for sustainable development goals. So you see on my screen chamomile.ch, it's one of our platforms which aims exactly this goal. So we want to move more capital into impact investing space on one side. On the other side, we'd like to give people opportunity to engage for impact investing, right? And I'm sure that some European investors would be very eager to invest in Asia and vice versa. So we just need to start collaborating in one way or another, but I would propose we should start with simple things like, okay, what is impact investing for you? What is this for us? What are you already doing? You know, because many projects are very similar in India or in US. And then if something is already done, we just can scale it up instead of reinventing the bicycle again. So we need to see what is already there, the amazing projects, and how can we scale it up in order to find solutions for our global challenges. So I think I stop here.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. William, you are also policy expert, and how do you want to introduce this point, the sustainability and the challenges and everything?
Okay, well, I certainly want to echo everybody that's gone before. I do want to say hello, and once again, thank you. I really do appreciate being here. I guess I'll start this way, just to kind of as a bit of a summary. Of the points that have been made so far, and all of them are valid, with the overarching structure that it's all inclusive. Because the problem is so large, or I should say, the challenge is so large that there are multiple ways that we can all contribute in our small part, because it didn't create itself in one big bang kind of theory. It was a result of numerous things. But for our purposes, what we can generally do is we can generally categorize the areas in these 5 general areas. You have the economic crisis and reform, which generally touches on what Ben was talking about, which is impact investment and the long-term return on investment. And on that point, just as a footnote, I want to just highlight this, that everybody talks about spending when it comes to, like, say, for example, here domestically in the United States, the Green New Deal. But rather, spending is more just like a one-time shot. I think it's what Ben and his cohorts are doing with regard to impact investing is the correct way that we need to be thinking about it. And it's an investment, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of the food sources that we choose, as Reverend Beth has raised, because investments imply an expectation of a return. Spending is merely a one-way deal. Investments go in and we expect for the future that we will get a return. So investments really are the way that we need to think about it. So we then have climate change, but we need to be thinking about climate investment. Now, you then have the other areas. So that's economic and crisis. Oh, that's economic reform and different ways of looking at it. We also have the technologies and governance. So the way we design our packages, everything that we use in terms of technology, whether it's the computers, the algorithms, the designs, all of that goes into it. And that's another area. And then we've got equitable transactions. For example, this might just be as simple as fair trading when we deal with crops and encouraging them in growing crops such as coffee. And then we have regenerative opportunities with regard to how we invest in the foods and things. Now, all of that being said, and just I apologize for a moment. It's
Okay. Thank you. We have our Ma'am Gales, and you are also part of this sustainabilities, and you are doing a lot of work in California. So how do you want to introduce this point, especially in terms of sustainabilities?
Yeah, thank you, Sharif. First of all, I always like to jump up to the highest level of thinking. And so while I believe there are all kinds of people working in the sustainability corporate world who really want to do the right thing and want to solve these problems, when we level it up and look at it through our economic lens, unfortunately, sustainability at the corporate level, it seems to me, has often become how much do we need to do so that people will continue buying our product? You know, we're now in a time when people are wanting to be sustainable. You know, people want to live a sustainable lifestyle. They want to buy sustainable products if they can afford to. So companies are out there, as long as profit is still their main goal, they're going to do what they need to do so that people keep buying their products. The problem is the people buying those products may not actually need those products, right? Still, the goal is to produce as much as possible, sell as much as possible. As long as producing as much as possible, selling as much as possible is our goal, we're going to stay in trouble, you know? I think we need to start looking beyond the what to the, for instance, how. There's a woman, Zoe Will, she's founded a group called the Institute for Humane Education, and she uses this term solutionary thinking. So her main goal is to transform the way we educate our children. So at the very earliest level, to start encouraging children to think about the full lifespan of everything they interact with, right? So if you have, if you have a can of soda, in what ways were people, animals, and the planet harmed all through the lifespan of this, helped and harmed all through the lifespan of this product, right? So from the mining of the raw products to the production to the ultimate disposal and where this thing ends up, who was helped and harmed along the way, right? And so that, and then I think that level of thinking is really important. And then even beyond that, we need to get to the why, you know, the psychology. When you look at the way we are consuming in ridiculous ways on this planet, more and more and more, the real why behind that, you know, has so much to do with our quality of life, which is diminishing by the moment, and we're trying to fill this emptiness with this stuff. So it's really about, are we actually committed to creating a livable, beautiful, shared future for our children and the children that are going to come beyond us? Or are we just worried about continuing to profit? And I question whether sustainability can even be a thing, a real thing, within the capitalist system, or at least within the capitalist system that we've created, or not. I think it's something we need to really carefully think about. So,
Thank you. Professor Donald, you are expert on innovation and this kind of things. So in terms of sustainability, what type of technology we can introduce in Asia Pacific?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the UN sustainability goals, only a portion of them, like 5 of them, have to do with the environment in any way. The sustainability goals are, I have the list right here. Just one of them is poverty, one of them is zero hunger, quality education, gender equality, affordability and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, life below water, these are environmental, and then peace, justice, strong institutions, and networks, partnerships across the world. And all of those are, as Ben pointed out, there needs to be metrics to be able there's several things about these things, but I think from the overall, what we need to think about is that sustainable growth has to do with being able to grow in a way that's sustainable. And in order to sustain growth, people need to have basically food and water and quality education. We come to realize that to some degree, a clean environment is actually a luxury good, even though, it shouldn't be. But if somebody's struggling to put food on their table, if their family's sick because of bad water, because they have no education, they have very little chance of being able to have the quality of life that they see or is happening in developed countries, then it's hard for us to tell them, well, you shouldn't do X, Y, Z thing because it's a bad thing to do, because in a lot of times they don't really have a choice. And I think it's important when I talk about going to the innovation, what I'm really work on is startups. I'm part of an incubator in Silicon Valley. And what we do is we help companies grow and get born so that they become companies. And there's a criticism of corporations. And I think it's important to realize that what a corporation is a legal vehicle so that multiple people can invest into a company, a startup. There's got to be a way, if 10 people are investing, that you can define the ownership that they have. One person invests 5 times as much as the other. So what they do is you break it down into stock, and that stock can be distributed among the people relative to how much they've invested. And the founders often invest time, sweat, equity. They get stock because of the work that they've done and their original ideas. Large corporations like that we love to hate, like Monsanto or something like that, they have a huge economic impact, but there's quite a bit fewer of them than there are the small corporations. And it's the small corporations that are able to have the flexibility to solve the problems that we see. So impact investment, in order to start a company, you need resources. And one of the resources you usually need is money. And so impact investing and targeting this kinds of startups that can make a difference in all of these areas is I think the foundational thing that we need to do to make this happen. I also want to say just that you can't ignore the institutional or governmental and non-governmental organizations and regulations and basically standards, so that people can interact with each other in a way so that one person can do something and another person can use it. And when the standards are developed, and the importance of the standards is that then you have something that you can use as metrics, because you can't just give money to people and have them go off and have no way of knowing if they're actually achieving the goals that you want to set. And the goals have to be something that are community-wide, and I consider a global community. So we need to have all of those things together to be able to really make a difference.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Alex, you are an activist. You are doing a lot of projects on climate change, and how you want to introduce with us about this sustainability and this point.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. So for the viewers, I'm really fortunate that I live in Santa Cruz in the Bay Area, where we have a really wonderful community college, and I've taken a wide range of environmental science courses. I guess Beth, Gail, and Annie, and Donald. So 4 of us actually live in the Bay Area. Again, we are fortunate that there's so many like-minded people in our community, so many people down to earth that seem to care about plants, animals, nature. A lot of vegans, vegetarians, a lot of people that are open-minded and look at more long-term solutions in our community. So I'm really fortunate that I live here with such an amazing community. So I do want to talk about Drawdown a little bit more. Annie's correct. It's a great source of information. I provided the link that should be up somewhere in the comment section at some point. There's so many solutions. It's not just veganism and voting with your money and the transportation industry, renewable energy. There's so many other categories that we could work towards creating new solutions, and how we could continue to work towards those solutions. So I do want to mention I've now been doing disaster relief work for about 2 decades. I have been a journalist. I've covered a wide range of news stories around the world. I've now been to 18 countries within the last 7 years. As I was doing news stories, I started seeing so much suffering and death that I wanted to be a part of the solution. So I took a lot of first responder courses, the EMT course. I started studying disaster relief. As I continued to educate people about climate change, environmental issues, ecosystem collapses, I continued to help. And it's just been really frustrating for me over the years. When I was 25 years old, I went and covered Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans by myself. I was driving down street after street, passing out food and bottled water to the people affected. I really started studying climate change after that. And since then, we've seen increases in cyclonic activity. We've seen colder winters, more blizzards, more forest fires, larger droughts affecting more people, food shortages, water shortages. We've seen all these disasters increase. So I've been on the front lines doing search and rescue. I've moved a lot of bodies. I've went to Iraq a few years ago. I've seen things from a different perspective, and I've seen man's impact on the earth, what we're destroying. I've seen widespread amounts of pollution, like when hurricanes come through. I've now been through 7 hurricanes, and I've covered the aftermath of 5. I've seen where entire villages or houses or communities or buildings are destroyed, and there's just so much pollution. So these superstorms are continuing at an exponential rate. They're happening more frequently. They're happening simultaneously. They're more severe. And so we all have to work harder to get caught up in the positive feedback loops that are happening with disasters, with ecosystem collapse. So we have a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. So we are living outside of our means. We're buying and owning things that we don't need, that don't serve a purpose. We're buying things that we want, not things that we need. We're wasting. I mean, not only like Beth mentioned with veganism and how important that is, we're wasting so much food. We're wasting resources. We're creating products that just go into the landfill. So we need to transition it into a circular economy. And that's a huge part of the solution. Education is a huge part of the solution. That's why we have to have more discussions like this. We have to transition towards like a long-term mindset, not just about us and the future generations. Yeah, we're just doing so many things wrong, and we have to have more conversations like this. We all have to take the individual initiative to work harder, to try harder. And like, we're all activists here. We're trying to reach out to other people, because if we continue to try to, it's not enough. We all have to transition. Like, we're all in this together. We all have to do everything that we can to do beach cleanups, to lower our carbon footprint, and vote with our money. So I'm trying my best to reach more people every day, and it's so important. We have too much to lose, and we can't give up. And that's what I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I directly want to go to Mr. Ben, because you are expert in this impact investment and this field. Specifically, 3 points I have in mind. Number 1, educations, because there is a huge amount of youth in Asia Pacific, and 56% people actually live in Asia Pacific around the world. I think more than half. And second point is that we have to develop a better policy for sustainability and the green technology. And number 3, from corporations and banking sectors, we need good investment on the sustainability and green technology and ESG. So how do you want to introduce this point, and specifically education, better policy, and good investment?
I hope I remember all these points. Before I start, I just wanted to add 2 comments. One is to Gail. What I would propose is that, Gail, we are talking also about if you look at in Netherlands, I think last week they passed a law adding carbon tax. It is a sort of carbon tax on food. So that means there's a research report that vegan meat was the most expensive, then it was the vegetarian meat, and then it was the steak, which was the cheapest in the market in Netherlands. Thanks to this tax system, which adds the carbon footprint of the food, it has turned exactly other way around now. So now the meat from the cow is the most expensive, then it is the vegetarian meat, then it is the vegan meat. So the point is not that capitalism does not work. Capitalism does work. only we are utilizing it in the wrong way. We are not taking all the variables in the calculation. One place, for example, in the climate we added, so we, by we, I mean the whole global community, the whole world, invested around 45 billion in renewable energy per year. We invest 478 billion in fossil fuel energy as direct or indirect investment, which in turn produces 5 trillion, and I'm talking in USD, damage to the environment every year. So there is something wrong. So for €1 or $1 that we are spending on renewable energy, we are spending $10 subsidy on fossil fuel, which is causing $50 damage. So $500 damage. So it doesn't add up. So now I come to your questions. Education, I think that is more Svetlana's field about how to look into education. Policy, I can say, is that we in Europe has passed the Green Deal. And I think in US also you're working, and I hope President Biden will be able to proceed further with it. I think Bill and Donald will be knowing much more about it, about the policies. But in Europe, we passed the Green Deal, which has been signed by all the European Union Parliament. It has been signed by the European Union members, but it still has to be ratified by national countries, by the national parliaments. So, but that is there. And the weakness of the policy, so we are now working on the second layer of it, is the second layer of the policy will be the actions, the measurable actions. So like Donald mentions, these have to be standardized and these have to be documented so that when some country agrees or commits to itself, it can also be followed up that whether it is agreeing or committing or not. That is one of the biggest weakness I find in the Paris Agreement, where everybody has signed it. But if you look at, and everybody is coming with very fanciful ideas about what they're going to do and plan to do. But if you look at real in the facts and figures, hardly anything is happening on the ground level, because there is no consequences attached to it, and there is no real measurable kind of reporting. The third part is the corporation and banking. That's again in Europe, a lot is happening, but it's still on the country levels very much. So Netherlands have passed a lot of policies, which is voluntarily, but which is very, very strict by all the banking unions. So all the banks are following it. France has passed these policies. So it is still on very much on country level. So countries are making policies which will make sustainability and impact as a mandatory part of the reporting of every investment in their portfolio. I saw one of the questions somebody asked about which countries. So I would say start with France and Netherlands. These are the most forward. And EU is working at it, but it's still not implemented. So I hope I remembered all your questions.
Thank you. Yes, I think Madam Gail, you want to add something. Yeah. Can you unmute yourself?
Trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry about that. Yeah, I would love to respond to that really quickly. And just again go back to this concept of solutionary thinking and thinking things all the way through. So, for instance, the question of beef versus vegan meat sounds very simple, right? At a high level. I mean, it sure sounds like we're doing the right thing when we eat vegan meat. But we need to think carefully about how that vegan meat is produced and why. I mean, do we actually need vegan meat? Is it something that anyone truly needs? I mean, you can live a healthful diet eating just whole foods. Do you need this processed stuff that was probably produced with monoculture crops, which we know are not sustainable, right? They are destroying our earth. They're using and abusing our water systems. They are destroying our ecosystems. So, I mean, the idea that that vegan meat product, which is packaged probably in horrible packaging, even if it's biodegradable packaging, which is also produced through mass monoculture industry, destroying large swaths of land that will be needed to produce food. I mean, we actually, I believe, need to move away from our entire global market and start producing things locally. I mean, we need to get back to this idea. We need to move away from the idea that the global north can determine everything for the global South. We need to move away from the idea that it's okay for some people to have that vegan meat or whatever it is they want to put on their table that they feel sustainable eating. Well, that's probably harming someone else's possibility to put food on the table at all somewhere else, you know, and maybe destroying someone's farmland or someone's beaches when the waste products wash up. I mean, we need to be looking at the full picture. And I would go back to saying that as long as profit is our primary goal, and as long as we're not thoroughly examining how people, animals, and the planet are being harmed every step of the way in every single process, and truly evaluating whether we even need any given product or not. You know, we don't need the amount of choice we have. The choices we have are killing us. We need fewer choices. We need localized economies. We need to be thinking about loving each other on this planet and how we care about everybody on this planet, how we make amends, quite honestly, for what the global North has been doing to the global South for a century or more. You know, we need to reframe everything and start thinking about how to continue living on this planet as an evolving, I hope, human species. So.
Thank you, Svetlana. Yes. Oh, sorry, Mr. Ben. Yes, you finished.
Sorry, Svetlana, for breaking. I just wanted to add, what you're saying, I completely agree. It's correct, but it's very hard because I believe in taking it step by step. If I go to Germany and tell all the Germans to get off their meat, I won't get anywhere.
Okay.
It has to be step by step. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, can I now?
Yes, Svetlana.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Gail, I agree to that. It's very idealistic. And I actually wanted to ask all the panelists, because all of you are converted, or all of you are aware of what needs to be done. Who of you is actually vegan or at least vegetarian? Okay. So it's where it starts. You know, people, even those who are aware, they are not taking action. The question is why? Yeah. So what's stopping you? Even though you are aware of that, you are not acting, right? And it's not only in food sector. It's the same in finance. People are aware of impact investing. They are still not acting. They are not yet transforming the assets. Again, why? I see that we are kind of over-reporting, over-talking, over-discussing things, but there is lack of action. And it's really needed, you know. And what I say, it always happens on 3 layers. First of all, you as a person, consumer, so you decide what to buy, if to buy at all, what to eat, and so on. Then second one, if you are working for a company, you are choosing for which company to work or not to work. So if you know the company is not sustainable, they don't do anything, you can leave. It's a choice. Of course, I talk from the experience. I worked for a bank, and to all the students in the world, you know, when I was studying at the University of Zurich, we were not taught about impact investing. I studied hardcore profit banking and finance. And it's on my way where I learned about this topic. And to all of those, this is why I really love to teach students, because they are so open-minded. Once they know, okay, it exists, I'm sure they are going to go this direction. So it's amazing how young people are convinced about the topic. But we need also the elderly generation, if you want to, you know, because they are at the moment at top positions and they decide where the capital goes, right? But just to finish this topic about 3 points, so personal level, then for whom you work, and then where your money is flowing. So either where is your investment flowing, or your pension fund. Are you even aware where your pension is invested in or not, right? And so if we can take actions on all these 3 levels, even if it's little one, but everyone does it, then we can generate already huge impact. And just a second, let me guys finish. So education, this is why I mean, education is very important. So you need to teach the students because they are the future generation. You need to teach existing bankers or consultants on the topic as well, how to do that. Because once they know it exists, they want to learn. Education is still very expensive, so we try to provide accessible education so they can take action. And for example, in Netherlands, they announced that they will introduce sustainable development goals in all the programs at the university, so students can be aware of SDGs, and then of course it's much easier to take an action if you already know that the challenges exist. And the policies, as Ben is always talking about the policies, it's also very important. So like in financial sector in Switzerland, if regulation is not supportive and for the banks, it's not profitable to get into impact investing, they are still observing. So they are observers and not actors. So this is my question to all of you, like, how do we activate our forces, even converted ones? Because as I clearly showed, not all of you are acting even what you can do, right? So doing what you can do is very important. So I stop here.
Yes, but World Talent Economy Forums, we are not only discussing, we're taking a lot of initiative. Even recently, we finished 35 megawatt solar projects. It's our real life initiatives, and we will implement a few more projects. Hopefully, everything must be based on sustainability and these points. We are working very hard. We need more of your support. Madam Gales, then Madam Beth, and then Dr. William. Madam Gale, yeah.
Sorry, it's hard for me to unmute. So I'd just like to respond briefly to Svetlana's, comments.
Svetlana or Sveta, for those who are having troubles with my name, no problem. Sveta is very simple.
Okay, thank you. I'm terrible at pronunciation. At any rate, first of all, we need to be careful anytime we try to come down to make an issue black and white, because it's rarely that simple. Like even saying that a vegetarian or a vegan diet is necessarily the best diet for our planet is really an oversimplification. Because if we look, for instance, to how indigenous cultures have eaten on this planet forever, often some meat was included in that diet, and it wasn't necessarily unsustainable. It's the way we produce meat at this point in time. The industrialized meat production is obviously horrible for our planet, but so is industrialized agriculture. I mean, plant agriculture. I mean, it's everything that we've done with our industrialized system with profit as the main goal, unfortunately, is detrimental to the planet. So, I mean, someone who's eating grass-fed, locally raised, well-loved meat occasionally as part of a plant-centered diet isn't necessarily doing the wrong thing, I would say. And then also, when it comes down to our individual actions and the role that those play within the system, really, we need to be very careful. I mean, all along the way, we need to be careful not to shame and blame people, because it's whether we're shaming and blaming a company or a person, we're not necessarily getting to the heart of the matter, because
I was not shaming or blaming anyone, just to make it clear. It was just an example, and I completely agree with you, Gail, that it's not necessary vegan, and especially, the soya stuff and so on is more healthy than some little bit meat produced with love, because I'm originally from Russia, and our cows, my grandmother had a cow, they had names, and it was part of the family. So I completely agree on that point. But it's just to show you that the action on different levels, even those who are converted, they are still not taking action. This is why that example.
Well, yes. And of course, there are millions of people on this planet that simply don't have a way to take action. They're the people that are being abused, by those people that are making whatever choices they want to make, right? So if we keep thinking about the fact that if we start from the place of believing, which I do believe that this is true, that all humans actually want to live on this beautiful planet we've been given, and we would like to create a future that our children and future generations can continue to have some quality of life in, and I believe ultimately have a way better quality of life than we're living right now. we need to be thinking into that beautiful dream. And I understand that it's a huge jump from where we are, because the way we're living right now, honestly, is a pretty low quality of life for everyone. You know, even the richest person on this planet has separated themselves from nature to a point that, you know, that we're forgetting why we even need to save it. You know, and so it is a huge jump, but it's also not that difficult. I mean, the majority of plastic waste on this planet, if anyone hasn't yet read it, there's a great article from March 2019, Rolling Stone, and it was Plastic Planet, How Big Oil and Big Soda Kept a Global Environmental Calamity a Secret for Decades. So that article is long and it's full of many amazing facts, one of which, you know, more than half of the plastic now on Earth has been created since 2002, right? And we're on pace to double that production by 2030. So, I mean, that's just plastic, but plastic is obviously one of the major sustainability issues that we're talking about. And again, when we get back down to the individual versus the corporation versus the government, I was trying to find it. I scanned it and I read the article in depth months ago. But somewhere in that article, they talk to the advertising campaign in the US from the 1970s that anyone who's my age or older will remember. And it was a Native American man crying, you know, and feeling sad about what we had done to this planet, which was a cultural appropriation. The guy was an actor. He was that ad campaign was funded by the plastics industry. That ad campaign was funded by the plastics industry because they wanted people to think that we were the problem. They wanted people to think that us, yes, we were throwing, you know, not me, but people back then were throwing their trash out of the car window and not even thinking about it. They wanted to put that blame on the people so that they could use it as a decoy so that people wouldn't realize that they were just going to keep ramping up production. I mean, we've, over the times that we've been producing plastic, only 9% of that plastic has ever been recycled. And plastic can only be recycled once. So like, even when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about full circle, when we talk about let's make our old plastic milk bottles into the new soccer field. Well, we did that, right? Or our old tires, sorry, into the new soccer field. Now that those soccer fields are becoming old, we're realizing that, hey, when that soccer field's meeting its end of life, it has to go someplace. And where is that someplace? It's not going to be recycled again. You know, it's going to go into our environment. I mean, microplastics that we're all eating, drinking, and breathing like crazy are largely the byproducts of those second life plastics. You know, the things that we think we've done the right thing to. There is no solution really that allows us to keep living disposable lifestyles on what we're making into a disposable planet. You know, we need to completely reframe our thinking, I think so.
Thank you. Madam Beth, yes. Dr. William, I'm coming to you. Okay.
Thank you so much. It's been such a rich discussion. And I just want to start by affirming that I believe that we have more in common here than we have different. And it's good to tease out those differences. And it's good for us to educate each other and the people who are viewing, because there's so much misinformation out there. And I can agree with so much of what you're saying, Gail. And yet on the topic of that I study and that I'm deeply involved in, which is looking at animal agriculture's impact on the planet and looking at dietary change as part of the overall necessary solution for us to continue living on this planet. It's just really important to me that myths get busted in that area, just as you're doing for plastics, you know. And then Svetlana, I also want to address something you said. I absolutely agree that we need to align our values and our actions. And you asked the question, why? You know, like, why don't we do those 3 steps that you're talking about? And I would say that we really need systems change, that we need individual change and systems change. But the systems don't change until enough individuals have changed, that we need critical mass. And that's the point we're in now. And I think it's an opportunity, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, because the way we're going to get more people to change is by creating an environment in which it's easier to change. So that question you asked, I mean, if you had asked, like, how many of you have solar panels or how many of you are driving an electric car, you might have gotten a bigger response, because really there's something about diet that people hold as so sacred, so personal, that they're going to go to bat. And they're going to say, you know, it's not about my diet. And they're going to go to great lengths to prove that their diet is going to be okay. So, Gail, I heard you reference, you know, that vegan meat. Well, of course, any vegan meat even if it's highly processed, not healthy, junk food, comes from a factory, it's going to have a lighter environmental impact than something like beef that it's probably replacing. So yeah, it's like you can feel all good about eating your vegan meat as opposed to a steak. You can also feel really good about, buying your Patagonia jacket that was made with recycled bottles instead of, buying new plastic, right? So there's this feel good thing that we really need to get over. And I think it's actually biggest in the area of diet. And there's this whole industry created idea, and there's some science that is purportedly backs it, that we could just change to local meat, that we could just eat grass-fed meat, that we could just, that we can still keep our diets, but we have to eat organic and, grass-fed and locally raised. Well, it turns out that where the product is raised or how it's raised is a tiny percentage of the footprint next to what it is. And there's research that came out of Oxford University. The lead researcher, one of the two lead researchers on the study, Joseph Poré, he set out to find how do you raise animal products in sustainable ways. They spent 4 years in their study. At the end of the 4 years, he became vegan because he concluded that there is no sustainable way to grow animal products that will feed all of the people on this planet. So I, in my, like my Santa Cruz, like privileged place, I can say, well, I'm just going to buy from local farms. I'm just going to buy organic and all the rest. But what happens when that 95% of the animals that are raised in the world, that are raised in confined animal feeding operations, or the 99% of the animals that are raised for food in the world in the US, what happens when those 99% of all the food, all the animal food produced, it's currently being raised in CAFOs, where does it go when we suddenly want to do it organic and grass-fed? There's nowhere for it to go. In fact, if people of the world were living the way we are living in the United States where I live, we would need 137% of the Earth's entire land surface to grow enough food to feed the people of the world. Okay, we're living so unsustainably as it is, with 99% of our animal products being raised in CAFOs, confined animal feeding operations. So there is no sustainable way. So we must change diets. We can't just, and I agree, Gail, that there's people in the world that are indigenous, that they have a small amount of animal products, but mostly plant foods, right? We know that historically, the only people who have eaten animal products at the rate that we do in the United States and many countries around the world that eat as we do, that only the wealthy people could do that. And most of the people were eating mostly plant foods with just a little bit of animal products. If we suddenly shifted to that, it would be sustainable. The Eat Lancet Commission did extensive work and came out with a report about how much, what the planetary health diet would look like. It would be healthier for the entire population. It would save billions of dollars in healthcare costs. And it would also be sustainable even as we reach approximately, 10 billion people by 2050. And the sustainable health diet that they came up with, it does include a small amount of meat and animal products, but it's not every day, it's not every meal, it's a very small amount. And if everyone in the world ate like that, then we could continue living on the planet. So I just want to say that I think it's really important that we continue to have these conversations so that we can, I totally agree, Gail, that we need to completely radically change our way of living. We've lived in a way that exploits and uses the natural world instead of our proper role as stewards. And this is the moment of reckoning. This is the moment of reckoning. We know what is happening and we know what to do, and we need to do it. But to do it, we need to support each other, and we need to break down these myths. Like I'll stop repeating myths about plastic, and I'd like to ask you to stop repeating myths about diet.
Thank you. Dr. William.
Okay, wow. Just wow. I'm so loving this. First, I took a step back, obviously, as I was listening, and I think that there's a common thread, and that common thread, but either with the mindset or the diet or solar panels or electric vehicles, it's going to be hard to, hard, if not impossible, to divest ourselves of the the driving factor, which is capitalism and the businesses that are doing it. And one way to do this, and I think it's taking inspiration from Alex and his longstanding position of economic activism, and that's to reach out to a new term that I've learned. It's called boomerlennials, which are those people our age, boomerlennials. So it's the millennials who are now our age that are kind of running around there, who are in charge of, who are both on the one hand the leading edge of people that were educated in the system of the importance of the environment, and essentially being that first wave, who are now in a position of economic authority, who are, who hold the assets, who are making the purchasing decisions, who can then, on the one hand, once they know, as Svetlana indicated, we've got to get out there and make them aware. But once they are aware of the various choices, whether it's on the investment side, which Svetlana and Ben are speaking to, or on with regard to their pensions and their investments, or on Gail's side, and I think maybe Alex, I don't want to speak for Alex because he's delightful and I'm looking forward to hearing from him, Alex. But when Gail talks about our mindset with regard to what we're purchasing, and Gail's absolutely correct, because like 90% of what we produce is, and it's our packaging with regard to plastic, just as an example. 90% of it goes to waste. We only recycle like 10% of it. Now, some people have been proposing solutions, biodegradable plastics. That's one thing. But there's been another development, and it's called PLA plastic, polylactic acid plastic, which they are looking to develop, which is far more biodegradable. Now, on the one hand, it says, okay, great, we've got this stuff and we can maybe deal with the issue of the excess plastic. But that's not necessarily where Gail is coming from, because he's asking the fundamental question, which is a very informative question, which is, do you even need that plastic spatula, even if it's made of polylactic acid? And I think, I'm not sure who it was on this panel, but in a prior thing, we talked about the greenwashing of recycling and this whole movement. And the greenwashing is, just as Svetlana pointed out, and as Beth pointed out, just makes us feel better about what we're doing, but it doesn't cause us to question what we're fundamentally doing and is what our fundamental practices. Are they right or are they wrong? Are they going to lead us in the right direction? And so in that regard, to the extent that I can add even just a little piece to my august body of experts here, which I'm so pleased to be in the middle of, and that is, I think we have to do it as a stepped-in analysis. One, fundamentally, our premise: do we actually need that product? Now, there's going to be a segment of the population that's going to say, yeah, because they're going to run along. So how do we mitigate that damage? Well, we can mitigate that damage in the best possible way by certainly biodegradable and/or the use of PLAs, at least with regard to plastics. Now, there's going to be another segment that doesn't want to give up other things. Well, how do we ameliorate those economic conditions? Because we are in a transition period. And so by definition, we have to take each segment step by step and begin to ameliorate, while at the same time, concurrently running along with long-term investments in fundamental change, which is where Ben and Svetlana come through. So it is a complicated puzzle, but what we're doing here right now just leads to optimism, and I am so digging this panel.
Thank you.
It's may I just quickly add? It's like, we are coming to the point here. It's about consciousness shift and paradigm shift. So it's really on the systematic level. Otherwise, it's like trying to repair something which doesn't work from the base. It will collapse one day or another if we don't really change the system and our way of being, of living. It will just not work. It's just a matter of time when it all gets collapsed. This is how I see it. And we can keep smiling and discussing, take little action. But
we're taking action. I mean, Alex has a tattoo, so.
Yes.
I just wanted to disagree with Svetlana. I don't think it will someday collapse. I think the collapse has already started. COVID is an example. I don't know if you're aware, but only last year we faced two massive pandemics in the year 2020. Only one of them did not hit the news because
I didn't want to make people depressed, Ben. Why are you always coming back with Armageddon scenario?
No, but
let
last
them act at least.
I just wanted to add this example. In 2020, China had to destroy 60 or 70% of its pigs.
Yeah.
There was a massive pandemic. Only luckily it did not spring from animal to humans, which COVID did. So we are facing now exponential increase in the frequency of the pandemics. So this has started, and this is quite very much related to the way we are living. And both of these pandemics also maybe are caused by the destruction of the biodiversity and the mass farmings, the animal, how do you call it? The animal farming. I won't make people further depressed. Yeah. I won't make them people more depressed.
Okay. No, this is actually fact. We have to take more initiative. Annie, I think you want to add more things. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that a lot of the things that have been touched on obviously are such like culturally specific. So it's like, okay, yeah, you go to those countries where they don't have infrastructure for even dealing with plastics or whatever, but where are those companies coming from? And that's where Gail pointed out they're mostly coming from developed countries, Northern Hemispheric. And so like I fantasize about some sort of like equatorial, like lawyers getting behind like equatorial nations suing countries. Like we do have the highest impact in the United States, like per person because of our lifestyle. And that's where like the subject of the meat eating is like relevant, but like it's not relevant to people who like live on meat, blood, and milk in Africa on their goats, like we have to be culturally sensitive, and we need to focus on like what is actually our part where we live in our specific region. I also want to mention a couple books. One, White Trash, I just finished. This book by Nancy Eisenberg about classism that I highly recommend. But as long as we have larger infrastructures creating dynamics where we are pivoted against each other through like classism, where it's going to be really difficult for people to get behind the issues that we do have in common, like the climate emergency. And so I recommend that book. I have not read this other book, but it keeps coming up in circles, Capital by Thomas Piketty, a French economist, but basically also speaking to how our economic system is not sustainable in the current capitalistic society, because it's inherently exploitative. If it could be used in a different way, so can heroin, such as, there's definitely people who have lived into their 90s off heroin because it's actually less harmful for your body than alcohol. But are we going to promote heroin? Probably not. So our value system, our psychology, and our value system in creating a more ethnocentric mindset as opposed to an ecocentric mindset. Are we going to go to nature and continue to use her and mine her for like our therapy, like go spend time in nature, which is always a good idea? Or are we going to do like the deeper work that might include like grieving and owning our part, and as individuals and as a collective simultaneously, to create that spaciousness internally, to realize we're just an extension of her. And it is a shift in our whole relationship to every single thing, so that we're not, okay, if we're integrating, like, I listened to this beautiful talk from these folks from the Drawdown conference that's happening right now. And Sherry Mitchell of the Nahamu Kawasit in the northeast area of what we call the United States currently. Sherry Mitchell was beautifully speaking about how, like, indigenous knowledge, how to actually integrate that into Western science and into Western universities and education, and how our current system of thinking, like, puts a hierarchy in types of thinking. So rationalization is considered a more important and more valued way of thinking than types of thinking around, like, that might involve more spiritual thinking, or that might involve some level of mystery, and that might involve, like, actual ceremony with plant medicines, or however it shows up. It's been really hard to integrate into Western science. And I think that that's really important because it's this huge foundational shift in what these leading cultures, economies, and countries and nations are setting as the standard of our value system. And that has to be addressed because that has this ripple effect. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. I think I had one other thing, but it's kind of just left my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Professor Donald. Please unmute yourself.
I think there's an underlying thing that everyone has been talking about, which is how we change, or how we can create change. And we can easily kind of make value judgments about what needs to happen. And to some degree, we can rationalize it, or we can be logical about what changes we need to make. We can see X is bad, and therefore we should do Y. But how many people here have tried to change the habits? How many people have tried to lose weight? How many people have decided to have an exercise program that they do? How many people have committed to reading one book a week, or any sort of thing like that? And I ask you, how successful are you? The core thing is to understand is that we do not behave rationally. The more we know about modern neuroscience, and we can actually look at this in people's brains, and we can see that we make decisions first, and then we explain what we did and believe that we made the choices rationally, but we don't. What we've experienced as a rational choice is actually a story we tell ourselves after we've made the choice. So we make the choice first, and then we rationalize it. And this is empirically can be shown. I can send you articles up the wazoo about this. This is really something that we know now. So you have to ask the question, where is it that we get those stories? We don't just make the stories up out of the void. We have to use our language, we have to use our culture, we have to use the information that's available to us. And that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is, what is it that our unconscious mind is doing when it makes those choices? Where does it get what's going on? And people mention feel good. And of course, when you're in a Bixby just decided to start talking. You have a rational, you're in a social environment, and the people that are around you, and you get information from the media, you get information from your friends and things like that. And so doing something that's acceptable in the community that you're in that gets you good feedback, so that it makes you feel good. The people around you like what you did is paramount to how we make our decisions. It's one of the main ways that we do it. And so if you look at you've even had a meeting with 5 people, and one person decides that they want to do something a different way, you're not, it can stop. I mean, nothing, you won't get anywhere, because people, we're not individuals. We're created by the social environment that we're in. We're a story we tell ourselves based on the social environment that we're in. We're not individuals. And so the problem, one of the things that I see that's an issue is that in the United States especially, we have this whole idea that we are individuals, that we are making rational choices, that we get better because we do more, we do the right thing. Where everyone winds up is the consequence of the choices that the personal choices that they made. Everyone has the same opportunity, but that's not true at all. That's just completely, and I don't really know the answer to it. I mean, I'm working trying to get people to understand that we can't exist without each other. We're a system, as somebody mentioned, that, one of the ways, or the key, ways that I feel we can get a toehold into it, is changing the incentives. And that's where I think things like impact investing really make a difference, because if people can create situations, which I think businesses are the way that's been done forever, and they can work, that create a social situation where people start being able to understand, to make a difference in ways that help people leverage the fact that we're not individuals, we're created by our social situation. And so we've had businesses one business that measures trash, one business that measures the smell of trash to be able to see if it's got organic material in it. We had one business that I really didn't care for too much, that tried to discover where oil was by the moon and the sun, so that they didn't have to explode things to be able to find the oil. I didn't really help them. Yeah. So anyway, the point of the matter is we can't just tell people to do something different or educate them that they should do something different, because we don't work that way. We have to be able to change the whole structure of how we think about. And many countries have done it. I mean, the Netherlands, Finland, lots and lots of countries have reasonable tax structures. Carbon tax is a really super good way to do it. So by tweaking economic situations, we can create incentives for people to be able to start doing things that are inherently collaborative, which is the way that we have to go. So that's what I want to say about that.
Thank you. Madam Gail, I think you want to add some point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think Professor Steiny makes some really good points. And getting at this idea of, our cultural influence, our influence by the people around us, and really this idea, which I think he touched on, of American exceptionalism. That's a term that I know Paul Ortiz, the author of An African American and Latinx History of the United States, uses. I'm not sure if he coined it or not, but this really myth that we are raised in the U.S. to believe that we are, this preeminent society, we are the saviors of the world, we do all good and no harm, really is quite a harmful thing, because it's led us to be blind to what we saw culminate on the Capitol steps and actually inside our Capitol yesterday, right? We saw white supremacists white supremacists who are very comfortable in our white supremacist society, in our white supremacist world, taking charge, being kind of welcomed in practically by the Capitol Police, in stark contrast to what we've seen when Native Americans have attempted to, defend their water against pipelines. When African American people protesting for Black lives in the streets have been, met with violence, right? Instead, we in our white supremacist country saw played out yesterday exactly who we are. And to me, there is some hope in that moment, right? Because it's the 400, 500 years of racial capitalism that this country is founded on, that this country has used and abused around the world, out on display. And watching how some news outlets around the world responded. Look, they're getting a taste of what they've been doing to us. This is what happens, and so that there is hope in that. I mean, Annie brought up, the real classist nature of all of this. I don't know if people have read Isabel Wilkerson's Caste, but kind of that it's a great backstory to what happened yesterday as well. She compares the caste system in India to the caste system, the racial caste system in the United States, to the caste system that came up in Nazi Germany, which was based on the racial caste system in the United States. So, I mean, it's time for us to come to terms with these things. And as a public, we need to stop being comfortable with injustice. We live in an unjust world, and our lives are part of that unjust world, and we're very comfortable there. And that comfort needs to go away in order for us to evolve and get to where we need to be if we're going to continue sharing this planet. So.
Yes, yes, Madam Beth, yes. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Sharif. Yeah, so I want to go back to what Donald Steiny said, Professor Steiny. Thank you so much for bringing this up. I think it's really essential that we talk about, like, why do we do the things we do? And I couldn't agree more that we do the things we do because of forces other than our own idea of, like, oh, I'm an independent being and I make my own choices. And this is apparent in all areas. And, I certainly have been looking a lot into the area of why we eat what we eat. And I'm quite clear that not only have our taste buds been corrupted by corporate manipulation of the food stream, and our reward centers in our brains have been manipulated through the chemical manipulation of our foods, and that our thoughts about what's right to eat have been manipulated by marketing, and that our, in terms of indigenous people, I appreciate, Gail, you always bringing them in, that indigenous diets have been completely colonized. It's like there are these forces that are shaping the environment in which we make our choices, and then our communities, as you said, our communities become rubber stamp boards for whatever it is that these forces that are making profit off of our choices, whatever it is that they want. But you raised the question of how do we change? And as a minister, I'm in the business of transformation, and I have seen and supported many people to change. I have seen and supported many people to change their diets, for instance, and stay on the diet and lose weight and let go of the diabetes and let go of the heart disease and the high blood pressure, et cetera, and stick with it. And I have also seen many people change how they behave in the world so that they can have a completely different life, and so they can live in a way that's in alignment with their own values and with and in a way that is supportive of the community. And what I know about change is that it really is essential that it happened in community. As you were talking about the feedback, we need to get feedback from our communities. And so how can we, as a community here that knows that these things need to happen, that knows that our planet is on the brink of disaster, that it's, as you said, Ben, it's not that we're waiting for some time at which we are going to go into, catastrophe. We're there now. My state of California, the fire, we were packed up to evacuate. The fire was within a mile of our house. All of this is interrelated. The fires, entire nations have lost their countries if they're island nations. They've been flooded. There's flooding down in beach flats in my area where people's basements are getting moldy. It's like it's happening now, and we do have that very short time frame, 7 years or 8 years potentially, before we use up our carbon budget. So like, how do we support each other to change? How do we create communities that are supportive of a new lifestyle, a way of living in alignment with the earth, and in a way that's in alignment with our own values? Most people, I know that I don't know anybody who would hurt another living being for their pleasure, for instance, and yet people are for their pleasure eating products that were raised with terrible cruelty and unspeakable cruelty, and yet they're able to rationalize, as you said, Donald. It's like you figure out what you're going to do and then you rationalize it, and cognitive dissonance plays a huge part of that. So how do we deal with this cognitive dissonance where people are doing something that's so unlike what they would do if they were looking at it more clearly? And I believe that there's a few essential elements, and education is a starting place. Education is really, really essential, but it's not enough. People need support, they need tools, they need community, and they need ongoing support. And they need enough of a community that it becomes less countercultural. When I was teaching some programs and supporting people to adopt a whole food plant-based diet in my home, I'm now doing it online. One of my students came back to me and I was like, I'd asked them how they were doing, and they invariably said, well, it's easy at home, but then I go out in the world, right? And one of them said, it's like swimming upstream. I go to my relative's house, I go to work, it's like it's swimming upstream to try to maintain this countercultural way of living. And that could apply to any of these things, to how much we buy, to, what kinds of cars we drive, that in order to make it less countercultural, we need to create communities that are calling each other up in loving ways, but supporting each other to make these changes. And I believe it's possible. I've seen it. I see it happening now. And I think another really essential part is that there be strong feedback loops. You mentioned the feedback loops, Professor Steiny, that we need to have strong feedback loops. And so making the kinds of changes that get us the biggest positive response coming back at us, I think is really important. That we need to start using these feedback loops the same way the manufacturers, the same way the marketers use the feedback loops to keep reinforcing and rewarding us for doing what they want us to do, which creates profit for them at the expense of human health and the well-being of our earth and the other animals with whom we share the planet, et cetera, that as we can exploit those same feedback loops for good. And I believe that is possible. And if anybody here on the call who didn't raise their hand in response to Svetlana's question would like that support, community, and tools for shifting to a whole food plant-based diet during the month of January, we have a phenomenal free program going on online. We have a whole bunch of plant-based experts that are well-known, some of them from around the world. And we're ready to support you and wrap you in love and community and tools to be able to transform that aspect of your life, which will help your reduce your environmental footprint as well as support your health.
Thank you. We have our new friends, Mr. Laurent. So yes, can you please introduce yourself with our audience? And I know that you are one of the activists for climate change.
Mute button.
Laurent, you have to unmute yourself. I think you might be muted.
He's not muted. I think you can join again. No problem. So by this time, Mr. Alex, you add your points with our discussion. Yeah.
So I have some points. So excuse me. So what we're doing right here, this is part of a global movement. So it's not just us having these discussions, it's people around the world. It's more of us focusing our time, our money, and our energy towards environmental solutions, all of us becoming more knowledgeable and conscious of climate change and the impending disasters of the future. I wanted to cover what Beth talked about how systems have to change and policy, and that takes people. So what we're doing with this, education educating other people. If we're all more educated, that helps the system change, policy change, and it again causes some of those positive feedback loops. In one of the questions, someone asked what countries are most sustainable, and I don't have that information in front of me, but I do think Costa Rica is doing a really good job at becoming one of the most sustainable or one of the carbon neutral countries. Maybe some other panelists could mention some of the other countries that have achieved zero carbon emissions or offset their carbon emissions or are getting close and working towards that goal. So earlier in this discussion, we did have some potential debate regarding meat consumption, veganism, vegetarianism. So I do have this very short list of some. So my experience doing activism, it doesn't matter if you tell someone or ask them about veganism, people get offended. That's like just how our society is. So if you bring up veganism, people get offended. So if I went up to someone in a big diesel truck and said, hey, you know, your truck's bad for the environment, it's polluting, you're idling it, whatever, that person's going to get offended. If I tell someone that's smoking cigarettes, it's bad for the environment, people littering cigarette butts, they get offended. People that are overweight or obese, people wasting food. If a family, married couple, whatever, they have, you know, 5 kids, 7 kids, if you say, hey, like, having too many kids is maybe bad for the environment, they're going to get offended. There's nothing you could really do that doesn't offend people if it's just how things are. So we all have to lower our individual carbon footprint. And like Dr. William mentioned in the past, you know, if we achieve 20% here, 20% there, well, we got to achieve 1% here, 70% here. We have a lot of work to do. So now veganism, I'm not vegan because, again, cultural relativism, traveling to different countries, you know, going to Nepal and Iraq and the Philippines, you can't like turn down food that people bring to you. And covering disasters around the world, I eat what's available. And I also don't like wasting food. Unfortunately, my girlfriend is vegan. And so I'm probably like 97% vegan. So I do want to mention that even though I'm not vegan, I've done a lot of other things. Like I'm in a hybrid car. I didn't own a car for 7 years. I've lived in a tiny home for a large percentage of my life. I was really anti-food. I eat organic. So there's different sectors, like where you live is important, your transportation, the food, you know, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, wasting food, not wasting food, your education, like what classes you take in college. It depends on what classes they're going to fund in college. In college classes. So products, what you buy, you know, buying things that you need and not just things that you want, maybe getting things used on Craigslist and secondhand stores, or buying things that are used so you're not buying brand new products. Where you spend your time, are you going to like a sports arena or somewhere indoors or something that takes and consumes a lot of energy, or are you just going to go into nature like Annie mentioned? So where we spend our time is also important, similar to how we vote with our money. Family, friends. So how many pets do we have? You know, are we getting pets that are bred, or are we getting animals that are from the shelter? You know, how many children are we going to have? That's another. And I chose not to have kids about 15 years ago when I became very knowledgeable of the climate-related disasters and anthropogenic global warming. So I'm super anti-kids, and I'll never have kids because I'm not going to bring someone into this world, a child into this world that we're destroying until we find solutions. So how we vote with our money, like towards nonprofits, how we're supporting the nonprofits, whether they're helping women in developing countries, sustainable stoves, planting trees. So there's also volunteering. So there's all these different things that we can do. So I can do all of these different things on the list. And I actually made a list of about 200 things. It's the longest thing I've ever written on Facebook. What I did to offset my carbon footprint, how I organize trash cleanups, public speaking, and activism projects, all of this. Just because I'm not vegan doesn't mean it's the best. So on Project Drawdown, not using your AC is actually the best thing that you can do. And it's like above veganism. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So veganism is important to a certain extent, but it does depend on where you live in the world. And Time Magazine wrote a really interesting article about how rabbits could save the world. So the environmental impact, resources, food, water that goes into creating beef is huge compared to chicken. And then those are much larger than rabbits. So rabbits can be used with aquaponic system to raise fish and vegetables. And there's a lot of things that we can do with incorporating rabbits and aquaponics and stuff. So it does depend on where you live and looking at it from, what your resources are, your surrounding areas. And like I have 5 organic free-range chickens where I live. So I feed them all of my vegetable scraps and my roommate's vegetable scraps, and we get eggs. So for someone to say like, oh, veganism is the answer, but we supplement all of our food and our diet with free-range eggs. So those are some of the topics that I wanted to cover. And I just want to say again, we need more environmental activists. We need people to continue to take careers in environmental science and climatology, in activism. We just need to continue this shift towards global sustainability because, again, we have a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. And I'll leave it back over to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ben. Yeah.
I just wanted to add to Donald Stein's comment. Yes, indeed, motivation and incentives help to change people's behavior. I can cite an example that happened in Netherlands. Many years ago, there was the banks came up with a kind of card which is called chip clip. You load the card with money, and you can pay small amounts with it. The money goes directly from your bank. There was absolutely no adoption from the market. The public, they were so much used to using their credit card and debit card, they did not want to use it. Till the banks, they suddenly came with this idea that at a lot of shops and cigarette machines and all that, you could only pay with that card. Or in the trains, you could only buy. And this, suddenly from one day to another, people changed their habit. So somehow policies or control from the top does help in changing the behavior pattern of people. And that I noticed also in the impact investment. Everybody knows it's amazing, everybody knows it's great, but still there is not enough market adoption. So here I would really propose that the governments and the policies and the regulations are put forward, which enhance or which encourage and motivate, especially the big funds like the pension funds and all that, to invest. So purely leaving it to incentives, I don't think it always works. I think sometimes you need a little bit of enforcement. At least that's my 2 penny for a thought.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Laurent, can you hear me? Mr. Laurent, can you hear me? Can you please share with us? Okay, so I directly want to. Yes, Mr. Alex.
Okay. Oh, just with Laurent. Laurent, there's a mute option on all of our platforms. I'm wondering if that's the issue with your device. There's a mute option on all of our platforms. I'm wondering if that's the issue.
Sharif, may I ask you,
no, I think he's not
how much time do we have? Because I will need to leave soon. May I say final remarks from my side?
Okay, final remarks.
Yes, exactly. We are. Yes, we want to go for before go for the final remark, because audience has too many of questions, because they want to learn more about sustainability, then want to learn more about impact and many more things. But in a one sentence, I want to ask this question with the concluding remarks: how we can develop better ecosystem in terms of sustainability and other things. I want to start with Savitlana. Yeah.
Well, I asked it myself. No, now I need to answer this challenging question. Again, I must come back to education. As you said, your audience wants to learn, right? And it's young people, mostly students, and we need to provide them what they want to learn, right? So, and as Ben said, it's not always happens just by incentives. So as a independent expert and free lecturer, I sometimes teach at the universities, but as long as it's not obligatory in the programs, the most of students will not have the ability, they will not be able to learn about those things. So I truly believe that our educational system must change in a way that people can learn about what are the challenges and how to solve them. We need also to change it in a way that they should become entrepreneurs. I think that in our future, more and more people should become independent entrepreneurs, because we were educated in a way to work in a governmental structure, and just being kind of a soldiers for capitalism. And that's not right. In order to solve the challenges in communities, anyone can engage and be entrepreneur and solve a little part of the problem in the holistic ecosystem. So this is to the question of ecosystem. It's what I believe, and if your audience wants to learn about impact investing, I'm more than happy to give just the topic impact investing, and in an hour they get it in a nutshell. What is it, where to find engagement, and so on. So really happy to volunteer for your audience and give 1 hour masterclass to the audience.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. We have the School of Talent Economy. In this School of Talent Economy, you can join and you can attend, and we can distribute this content to the youth community. Besides that, we get a specific complaint from the developing nations, many corporations. Even today, I get this point. Like many entrepreneurs, like big corporation, they complain that they're in trouble in developing nation in the COVID period, because too many of people now they're jumping on entrepreneurships, and 90 to 95% people actually fail. On the other hand, getting a very good amount, like employees and credible employees, and I'm sharing the practical experience. It's not just newspapers and other things, because we are really engaged with industry. So the industry, they are really worried that they say that, okay, we are listening too much of things entrepreneurships. Now we are losing our employees, and employee losing their business. What's going on? And this is another challenging situation for the big corporation in Asia Pacific, at least I can say, and specifically in developing nations, because learning also important. But I'm sure that we are sharing few of the website from Mr. Ben, Savitlana. They are very educated. Even our panel, they are very expert in entrepreneurships, startup, innovations, and many more things. So they are very good mentors. So if you want to get a real guideline, I think you can follow them. And that is the point. Yes, Mr. Lauren, can you hear me? Unmute.
May I use this opportunity? I really need to leave, and
Mr.
I
Lauren.
would like to thank all the speakers.
Okay.
It was amazing to have you guys and listen to your opinions. I hope to get in touch with you one another time. So thanks, Sharif, for organizing this amazing thing, and see you in the next edition, I guess.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Yes, Mr. Ben.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think the one point I would say is that what everybody said in this panel is amazing, because you all hit the point completely. But we need to act, because like also Beth mentioned, we have 7 years left. Otherwise the changes it can't be changed back. What everybody said in this panel is amazing, because you all hit the point. I listen to myself. Is there some kind of echo? Apt, because this stopped. So
yes, Mr. Ben, can you share?
We have to work on the policies and regulations, and we have to hold our governments and our representatives responsible to fulfill their duties, because the moment how it is working, it's not working. That's the problem. And that's all I can say for the moment. We have to all come together and work, whether in small way or big way, however we are active, in every possible way, to save this planet for our future generation.
Thank you.
And I admire you guys all.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Madam Beth,
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank everybody. I think that everyone here is doing really excellent work and made great points. And I'm so grateful to be in this with all of you. And I want to say, just to answer your question, which was how can we develop a better ecosystem, that it really is important that we work both from the bottom up and the top down. that we need to, like any movement, we need to reach out to low-hanging fruit. We need to go to the people who are our closest allies, even if they're not quite in our camp yet, and we need to support them to come into the camp, build critical mass so that we have the political will that's necessary, so that the leaders will know that they also need to implement policies that will support these changes. And we also need visionary leaders that aren't waiting for that political will, leaders who will just say, this is the right thing to do, it needs to be done if we're going to keep living here. And so we need to engage those potential political leaders. We need to get them into place in office and support them to make the right decision. And with those two things, I believe we can really make a lot of change. I felt very hopeful. I would say the first month or so of the COVID restrictions, I just felt so hopeful because I saw that combination happening, where there were leaders that were doing the right thing, even though it was uncomfortable. They were asking people, for the sake of the community well-being and for everybody's health, to take actions that people don't like to do. Stay home, give up your this, give up your that, et cetera, et cetera. And most people were doing it. And I just had so much hope. That is one of the most hopeful periods I've had since I've really started delving deeply into this climate crisis, because I saw that it is possible for the people to do the right thing and for the leaders to do the right thing, and that together we really did make a difference. And of course, the difference that happened for the environment from people staying home from COVID has been overstated. We know this, but still we saw that behavior change happened, and it happened on a massive scale. And so I believe we can do it, and I have hope and faith that we will. So again, thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gail. Madam Gail.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you again for having me today. It's been another great discussion. And yeah, I would just like to close kind of going back to this big picture thing, and really just the need to bring a moral compass to everything that we do. And that when we talk about an entrepreneurial spirit, I think we need to look at that very carefully, because, the US, Silicon Valley, we're known for our entrepreneurial spirit, right? Silicon Valley is known for all of these wonderful advances that it's brought to the world. But with those wonderful advances, we've also created huge amounts of tech waste, right? And we need to really bring that solutionary mindset as a starting place to everything that we do. We need to evolve. It's a human evolution point. And we need to look to our children and to future generations and use that as a starting place for our thinking. And profit cannot continue to be our first goal. As long as we're starting new companies and making new products and profit's our first goal, even if it's a sustainable product, we're starting in the wrong place. We need to start from a place of how is any given item, from raw product through production, through use to disposal, both helping and harming people, animals, and the planet. And we need to think of this 7-year mindset, this time that's drifting away from us, and we need to look to those, those big changes that we need to make. And we need to bring an anti-racist lens to everything we do, an anti-sexist lens, and a pro-equity lens. We need to move beyond this time when we believe it's totally okay to use and abuse people, animals, and the planet, while some few people are profiting. That is the old way of thinking. And the only way we're going to continue to share this planet is if we evolve beyond that. So, and as a mother who, yes, has put 3 kids on this planet, before I was awake really to what we were doing, because I grew up in a blind, brainwashed era. We are a brainwashed nation on a brainwashed planet. And we need to wake up. And I feel hopeful that we're moving in that direction. So thank you.
Thank you. Miss Annie.
Sure. I wanted to give one more example from this amazing drawdown conference that I've gotten to be a part of this week. So this is from the Living Labs, a group of people from a number of different universities up in Canada and North Midwest US. The Social Science and Research Council of Canada has a lot of funds. And so this is an example around like policy change. Policy change is hard, and sometimes we come up against like roadblocks or seeming like things that seem like barriers because there are policies in place that make it difficult to operate sustainably. So this example, there's a local solar company, and these folks helped create a living trust. So X amount of the proceeds from this solar panel company go into a living trust that is for the local indigenous nation, and that's will forever be giving them money. And to do that, they needed to go and actually change the laws around how living trusts work for that company. So I thought that was really inspirational. I wanted to mention for permaculture, a lot of people think of permaculture in relationship to sustainable agriculture, but permaculture, permanent agriculture, applies to businesses, lifestyle, community, solutions, communications, everything. So as important as it is to consider our carbon footprint, I think one of the most impactful things I've heard from a permaculture teacher is to consider our handprint more than our footprint, because that it's a positive, forward, empowering mindset. We all can do positive change. We need to plant trees. We need to create conversations like this and address water issues, everything, as opposed to making yourself as small as possible, which can be disempowering. And as well as the triple bottom line from permaculture. So if you apply permaculture to business, instead of just a triple bottom line or thinking about quarterly or even like annually profits, kind of short-term thinking, how can we extend that and also consider if we want to move, we need to get to sustainability, then we need to move to regenerative. Because if we are shooting for sustainable, that means flatlining. We can't do sustainable. We can't sustain this where we're at right now. So we need to move to regenerative, which means we actually have to counterbalance what we've done in the last 100 to 10,000 years. So the triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. If you're having a business or whatever company or organization you're involved with, thinking about the people, thinking about the planet, and thinking about the profit, and how all of those things are equally important for an organization or business to actually be regenerative. And I really appreciate everybody's input and being included in this group. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Professor Donald. Oh, yeah. Ben,
oh, yes. TBLI is impact investment. So when you're talking about triple borderline, that is impact investment. It's the same thing. Sorry, I just wanted to add.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Donald.
Had to unmute myself there. There's a couple of things that people said that I want to address, which is the issue of hierarchies and social strata, which is very complicated, and one of the fundamental issues about that is that human beings are social animals, and we organize ourselves into status, and having higher status actually winds up giving you better health, better attitudes. The people of the higher status actually are psychologically happier and better off than people of lower status, including health. I mean, people of lower status wind up. So striving for status is something that's built into us. And I think that it's important that we acknowledge the things that we are actually part of us. I think that leads into a very good example of where entrepreneurship can wind up helping, because in Bangladesh, women, microloans to women had more impact on the relationship between men and women than almost anything anyone's ever done in history. That's absolutely amazing. And that leads into the importance of realizing that entrepreneurs and businesses don't just make things. Entrepreneurs and businesses can make processes, they make services. There's a huge amount of stuff that you can do that doesn't that doesn't make plastic and make bad things that go into the environment and all that kind of stuff. And our ability to identify things that we can do better and turn that into something that a person can make a living doing is one of the most important things that we can be doing, because I mean, historically, it's one of the sustainability goals is equality for women, and microloans to women have proved to be one of the most effective way that anyone's ever found to raise the boat for women. So it's a mistake to think that all of our everything that companies do is stuff that is making stuff and things. We're doing a lot more than that. One thing that I want to say, and I think that's really important to understand, is we are manipulated by not just by the people that are around us, as I said before, but there are actually people who have gotten very, very, very good at manipulating us. And I recommend a book called Propaganda by Edward Bernays. It's very short, and someone recommended the movie Merchants of Doubt. That's actually about how the cigarette industry and other industries have created ambiguity so that we don't really know. Some people don't really, for a long time, didn't believe that cigarettes were bad for you. And this is all done with propaganda. Or Edward Bernays was Freud's nephew, and he was the person who's considered to be the father of public relations. And if you read that book, it's really short. It'll blow you away what he says. And he just basically said, we are all manipulated by a small group of people who know how to do it. And so I don't really know the answer to this, but we have to get into a position where we're able to counter those messages. He believed that there was a basically free market of propaganda, and that one propaganda was going to neutralize other propaganda, and it was going to kind of work out at the time he wrote it in the late 20s. But that hasn't proved to be the case. There's certain people that control the media, that control the sources of information that we get. Even schools, the textbooks in schools are controlled, have been traditionally controlled by Texas, who's the biggest textbook buyer, and so they have this religious stuff in them and things like that. I want to say something that's a little more amusing. I spent a month in Japan, and they had no idea what a vegetarian was. My wife is a vegetarian, and she wound up losing 20 pounds. They just didn't get it. So the one other thing that I wanted to say is about entrepreneurship, and how Sharif mentioned that there was a lot of failures. The people that in Silicon Valley, there's probably 1,000 companies that fail for every one that succeeds. So for every Apple, there's 1,000 companies you've never heard of that somebody started that didn't make it. But the people themselves don't fail. They learn, they gain valuable experience, and they become useful in another situation, the next company that gets started. There's people in Silicon Valley who've become incredibly successful after having gone bankrupt 3 times. People don't even consider it to be a bad thing to fail. It's part of growth. So I think that the impact investing is a very strong way to be able to start. As I said, you need capital. You also need social capital.
Yes.
You need the connections, and so that's what I need to say.
Thank you, Mr. Alex.
Yes. So
Yes,
I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank Annie for what she said about people, planet, and profit. And that goes along with what Gail was mentioning, people, animals, and the planet. And that's what I've been also saying for years is every time I balance my time, my money, my energy, I usually try to direct it towards, is it helping people, is it helping animals, or is it helping the environment? And that's how I manage my time. So time management is really important when it comes to environmental activism, sustainability, regenerative agriculture, and everything that Annie discussed. So we only have 1,440 minutes every day. So how are we balancing our time? Where are we spending our time, and our education and everything? So this is a global movement. It's going to become more socially acceptable around the world. I remember 5-10 years ago when you would do environmental projects, they would call you a tree hugger or a hippie, and they would have negativity directed towards you if you were just trying to pick up trash or do something good for the environment. Thankfully, this is now a global movement. Sustainability is more socially acceptable, so the more projects you work on, the easier it is for our overall transition towards sustainability. There is going to be a lot of opportunity. So there is a lot of major categories and subcategories in the transportation industry, education, impact investments, everything. There's just we got to change and shift our entire society. So there's a lot of opportunity when it comes to all that. So what we're doing with the energy and resources in this platform, using electricity, using the internet, this is like taking 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. That's what a lot of activism is. That's what we're doing. We're just trying to get to a sustainable point, and we do have to take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. So in Santa Cruz, in 2015, we passed the anti-vehicle idling law, where you can't idle your vehicle for more than 90 seconds unless you're law enforcement or a county worker or whatever. So there's certain limitations. So that law was implemented, I think, in different European countries and different countries around the world. I'm not privileged to that information. That's not my subject of expertise. But I want to say that after going up to, I think it was 27 vehicles, I'd go up and I'd knock on their window or stand there. And so vehicles were idling for 2, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in Santa Cruz. So I'd go up and I'd advise them of this law. Most people said they didn't even know the law. Several people got aggressively violent, and I was in dangerous situations. So I actually ordered a few thousand of these paper stickers that say the code right here in Santa Cruz that we're in a climate emergency. Please don't idle your vehicle. Now, instead of going up and knocking on the window, I see them idling, I just stick this on the back of their vehicle. It's way easier, and I actually distribute these to anyone that is interested. So if anyone wants to give me their contact information, I actually have a whole bunch of stamped addressed envelopes right here. I can send you a whole bunch of these. Again, this code only applies to the city of Santa Cruz and not the county. But again, it does just talk about, it shows that we are in a climate emergency. So this is just another form of activism that I'm working on. I got a lot of projects, and I'm trying to do everything that I can, because we got a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. And like has been mentioned in the show, 7 years, that's very optimistic. Ecosystems are collapsing around the world, and positive feedback loops are already underway. No matter what system you look at, they're underway. And I just want to conclude by saying thank you, Sharif, for putting together this wonderful panel, the discussion with all these experts and professionals. I hope a lot of people are watching this video. They share this video. They search a lot of the keywords that we mentioned in this discussion. And again, sustainability is an important keyword search. Circular economy is another huge keyword search I wish more people would do. So thanks again, everyone, for this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lauren, can you hear me? Can you share? Okay, I'm really sorry about you. Actually, next week we have more session on sustainability. So I
think
request
5.
all of
Yeah.
our panelists to join in the next sessions and next week sessions, and we will share our information and everything. Dr. William, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can. Yes, I can. You sound great.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What I just want to say in conclusion is simply this: is that we're on this panel is on the right track, and to the extent that we can use this as a platform to further get the word out. I do think this. I think that the globe, because of COVID, is at an inflection point. We've spent the year trying to find the solution, but during that time, we've been thinking more globally about the solution and such. But that has had a cascading effect of having us think globally about a number of other issues. And so we are right here at the right time when it comes to rethinking and examining the future regarding sustainability in the 21st century moving forward, because we're still here while we have a heightened world consciousness. And it's real. This, if nothing else, this is a time when people are going to be most receptive to the various ideas that are out there, whether or not we appeal to them based on economic reasons, whether we appeal to them based on investment and rates of return. And for that reason, whatever it is we need to appeal to them, whether it's their altruism, whether it's just protecting their local environment, whether it's the future of their kids or non-kids, whatever it is triggers them that we can appeal to, I believe that we are at an inflection point where we have the opportunity to get through to them in a very real way. And it's one of these, I'd like to think of it as two things, just to go with standard notions. One, we have an unmissable opportunity to really take advantage of this crisis. It has been a global crisis. We're going through it, and we have an unmissable opportunity if we just get out there and talk about it and repetitively share it and speak it and live it. Now, I am not so bold as Alex to go put a tattoo on it, but I certainly bleed to the extent that I can this notion of sustainability. So with that, I am hopeful, and I do want to add this: that I brought it up on a number of other programs, but I'm pleased to say on this panel today, with all the definitiveness, that we have a new administration here in the United States, and so that is going to change, and that the Democrats, having taken control of the United States Senate, is a very, very big deal, because now the Democrats are going to be in a position to actually pass the legislation and implement all that we are talking about. And so, in some respects, when Svetlana was talking about action, we are now going to see whether, if and whether the United States, and I think it will actually put a $23 trillion economy behind the very values that we are talking about here today and on prior shows and on subsequent shows. And so I'm really, really, really excited about it. We're in for a ride, but I'm glad we're actually taking the ride, because we've never been at this precipice before, with an inflection point that people are listening, with the world's largest economy that's ready and poised to do and lay the groundwork, backed by real dollars. So I'm hopeful. Reverend Beth, yes, let's figure out how we produce the food. Annie, you're absolutely right. Gail, you're right. Let's start talking about, North versus South and what we've done. Ben, you're right. Let's get to them and invest for the future, and they can make a couple of bucks along the way. And Alex, keep placing those stickers out there. And Donald, by examining and causing us to examine how it is to go about thinking about things. So it's really an exciting time to get all these divergent voices together. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I want to share just last one specific things. Like we always, World Talent Economy Forum, I told that we are not only discussing, we are taking a lot of initiative. We have our analyst from Bangladesh. His name is Mohammad Shoail Rana. With the Rotary Club, they are doing fantastic works. I just want to share one of the initiatives specifically today. Many of the developing nations countries people, they are suffering a lot. So today they are distributing, just a moment, distributing blanket with many of the peoples, and we are also supporting and especially want to give thanks the Rotary Club from Gazipur, and especially our friend. There are actually thousand and thousand people. We are trying to engage. We are trying to take different kind of initiative. We have our friends, Mohammad Shohel Rana. I want to give him special thanks to contributing for these peoples. And this is our objective. This is our objective, that we want to change human lives. And when we want to change human lives, we have to take initiative, and we have to take a lot of action. So this is our objective. We are very much action oriented. Whatever we are discussing, we try to implement it. We need more support. We need different corporations, organizations, universities for creating better ecosystem, creating better education system, creating better policy. And every time we're trying to engage with governments, corporations, and hopefully by this way we can create a better world. This is the objective. And talent is everywhere. Talent is around the world. We are searching the talents and connecting all of the talents, and these are the mentors, those who can help help you. And I'm sure our youth community get a lot of support from today's panelists. Next week we have more excitement, more initiative, and more policy level discussion. Hopefully our audience will support, and as well as our speaker, they will join the next week's sessions. So thank you for today's sessions. It's really great session, and I'm sure our youth community, every day at least 10 different universities we are engaged, and we are distributing our content. They will be really benefited, and everybody will get real support from our expert panelists. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for today's sessions.
Yes, thank you, Sharif. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.